Welcome to Tales from the Bridge. This is episode 66, and we're talking about Dennis E. Taylor's We Are Legion, We Are Bob. 2 thumbs up by some of us, 1 thumb up by one of us. But overall, we love the book. It's a fun one. Next week, David Zindel joins us on the bridge, so we're happy to have David back with us. All right, everyone's waiting for us. Let's make our way over to the bridge.
Have you ever been in a video game and you found a bug or you found an exploit or something that allows you to level up quickly or find points or get free something or other? I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced this before. Like, you sit underneath that thing in Super Mario Brothers and you just keep getting coins and coins and coins and coins. In the real world, that doesn't really exist, right? You can't get free energy. There's no such things as perpetual motion machines. I was listening to a gentleman by the name of David Kipping, who's an astrophysicist at Columbia University. And he has actually a really cool idea for hacking the universe to get some free energy. And when I was listening to him, I thought, well, this is a whack job. But what he was suggesting was about how you could create a space propulsion system using black holes. And I heard that, and he says, this is science fiction. Come on. But what he describes is a way to propel spaceships between black holes using lasers that you shoot into a black hole. And I mean, obviously that sounds like something completely out there and crazy, but what he describes is you shoot a laser, let's say it's like a red laser, and you shoot it just above the event horizon around a black hole. And presumably we'd have to be able to get to a black hole, which we cannot do. And presumably you'd have to make a pretty darn strong laser to be able to shoot around the event horizon of a black hole and come out the other side. Because what would happen is it would bend it and it would come back out if you get just the right angle. And when it comes back at you, it's been blue shifted. The energy level is higher. So you get more energy out of it because of Hawking radiation, as I understand, or something like that. And you can propel yourself with these lasers. So he describes this idea of being able to transit around the universe or around the galaxy, going from black hole to black hole to accelerate yourself and to decelerate yourself using these lasers. And this is a concept I've never heard in science fiction. Have you guys ever heard this before? Or, I don't know, it seems plausible. It feels like some science fiction author needs to take this up and write about it.
Well, I already tried this, and it didn't really work, so I guess.
Well, then there we go. Let's call him up.
Yeah, no, that's quite fascinating. And I just want to know physically, what would the size of a laser like this, like in diameter even, and like what size does it need to be to have that kind of strength to withstand going in and out of a black hole?
I think it doesn't go into the black hole. I think it would have to skirt just around the edges of it. And I think it would have to be pretty big because the incremental growth of energy of the laser that goes around it would have to be such that it propels you on the other side of it. And so I got to imagine you got to have a crud ton of energy, like fusion style. But what really got me was the idea that you could get energy for nothing. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that surprises me that you can get more energy by swinging a beam around there. Because usually like Hawking radiation is when, I mean, I'm not sure how it applies to this, but a Hawking radiation is like, so quantum mechanically, particles and antiparticles pop into existence all the time, and then they annihilate each other all the time. And so it's like splitting zero into positive and negative and it going back. And then near the event horizon, when that event happens in just the right spot, one of those particles is eaten by the black hole and the other one shoots out. And so that's the radiation part, right? Like you're sort of taking energy from the vacuum, I guess, right? Like there's nothing. Then 2 particles are created. Usually they would destroy each other and you're back to nothing. One gets eaten, and so now the other one gets away. And so suddenly you've sort of got a particle coming out of nothing, coming out of the vacuum. And that's Hawking radiation. What would happen with a laser around the edge? I mean, it seems to me like some of the photons would get eaten by the
He says that energy's up.
It's have less coming out.
He describes it like if you shoot a red laser around it, it would blue shift. And so it moves up the energy spectrum. And so there's an incremental energy increase. And so that would be, in my mind, energy from nothing. And I don't understand how that works. But he describes this as a hack in a video game or an exploit or a quick way to level up, which I can understand. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Although it sort of wouldn't be free, right? Like they're in a black hole. It's the energy of an entire sun in there, right? You've had a whole star get collapsed down into a point, and so there is a ton of energy presumably somehow sitting inside that. And this is a hack to somehow get some of the energy back out, I guess, from the black hole. Interesting.
That makes sense.
But yeah, so you can imagine now these are like kind of like mirrors that you can push, and black holes could become mirrors that you can push and pull against, right? And so you've got a black hole behind you that you use to accelerate yourself, and you got another black hole that you use in front of you to decelerate. And you could imagine mapping out, all the black holes in the region, and depending on where you aim your lasers, right, you can sort of have that come back to you as a push-pull mechanism. That's pretty cool. I don't know.
I thought so. But, that was what he said. The natural waypoint stations all around the galaxy. Suddenly, these black holes become little centers of civilizations of where you can move around from. And the problem is, of course, that black holes are hard to see because it's very hard to get any light or information from them.
Yeah, it sort of suggests that that's a great spot. If we do find a black hole, we just go send a probe to orbit there for a while and see who shows up. Since these are sort of like interesting way stations in the universe, in the galaxy. Yeah. Cool. But, pushing and pulling yourself with lasers, photons exert some pressure, but not that much. Like usually when you talk about using lasers to move, spaceships, they're very, very small.
Yeah.
They're like, the kind of like a chip, right, that we're planning on sending over to take a picture of a star with an enormous sail. And then you can sort of shoot a laser at it, and it would take a really long time to accelerate. I would find it very difficult to imagine like a big starship being pushed effectively by a laser beam.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it would have to be small, those little micro interstellar objects. That would probably be the most likely candidate for this working.
But that sounds very cool. So tell us about this. Where did you hear about this, Kevin?
There's a gentleman named David Kipping, and he's written books. He has a big YouTube channel, and he talks about alien civilizations. He talks about what we would need to do to detect alien civilizations, and he's a great critical thinker. So he's certainly not pro everything is alien. That's not his thing. And he is a true astrophysicist. He publishes a lot, but he also has a great way of articulating the scientific stuff to people, to the average Joe. So I heard of him on Lex Friedman on a podcast with him, and that was a fascinating interview, which I highly recommend.
Very cool. We've been talking about fusion a lot in the last few episodes. It keeps coming up, and Lex Friedman had a great interview with, I believe it was Dennis White, who's a MIT researcher in fusion, and that was the first Lex Friedman interview I listened to, and it was great, like really, really great. And this guy is really making it happen. It's not just that he's a prof. He's been doing fusion research for his whole life, but he's now launched a company to miniaturize the tokamak. That sort of the international collaboration's been building this huge one, right? And there's basically been an advance in laser technology, magnet technology, to be able to miniaturize this 40 times. And he thinks they're going to start pumping energy into the grid in 4 years. So anyway, Lex Friedman talks to a lot of great people, and that's another interesting one to look up, Dennis White.
For the book of the month, we read We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor. This is one of the easiest books for myself to read in the past few years, where I just picked it up and the pages just turned themselves. I have started to listen to the second one. Actually, I'm almost done the second one. We Are Many. Not as good as the first, and maybe that's because the first was so exciting to be like, oh, wow, this is really cool and so fresh and new. However, we'll just stick to talking about the first one. I really enjoyed it because it's not complex. It's not heavy. It's not super sophisticated. The language is not brilliant. However, it just tells you a great story. It really kind of reminded me of another book that we all really liked. Not to compare the two in any sense, because they're very different. They did have the same narrator, Ray Porter, for the audiobook, Project
Hail
Hail
Mary.
Mary. They're kind of, I mean, it's a first-person storytelling of someone who's going on this journey into deep space, and they're trying to figure out what to do next. And there's something similar about that, and there's something I really enjoy about that, just being one person being put into a very difficult situation, but kind of having fun doing it, even though it's probably the most stressful thing that you would ever be faced with. So the concept of the book is simply that our main character signs up for something in which their consciousness will be put into a computer, and they wake up many, many years later, and I think they are the only surviving person or consciousness in the computer. Is that right? Or that's how it's.
There's others.
There's others.
Yeah.
There are a few others. Yeah.
Right. So he becomes basically a computer, or a human consciousness in a computer that is put into a von Neumann self-replicating machine and is blasted into space, and you have this amazing story. The main character ends up replicating himself into different versions of himself. All of them are a little bit different, as their experiences are a little bit different. They go to different areas of the solar system and the galaxy. Some of them stay at Earth, and their goal is to basically get some of the surviving humans off of Earth, and we don't really know where they're headed or where they're going necessarily until later on. And there's also meeting new creatures on another planet. There's a lot going on, but it's so simple. The storytelling is the way that Dennis E. Taylor tells the story. It's so fun. It's there's a lot of pop culture references, a lot of Star Trek. And it's just, it's an easy book to read, and I highly recommend this to anyone who's not even a big reader of sci-fi. So if someone wants an easy book, or you want to buy someone a present, I highly recommend this one, because it's just an easy pickup for any reader. It doesn't take much. It's exciting, and it seems like an old idea, this whole human brain in a computer and then becoming a self-replicating machine. I mean, something about that seems so simple and obvious, yet it might be one of the first times we've read it in a book. And I just loved it. Thought it was fantastic, super fun. What did you guys think?
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
I really like this book as well. This was, as you say, very accessible. The von Neumann machine replication, you're right, it's such a simple concept. But if you think about it, this is a human level intellect inside of a computer that has an atomic level 3D printer. So it can print anything, right? It could replicate itself with its own 3D printer. It could come up with better designs for itself. And if you have infinite time, if you can crank up the speed of thinking, and you're an intelligent person like Bob is, our main character, he can come up with great solutions to a lot of mankind's problems. And this is what he does. He figures out how to do faster than light communications. So, and he can do that in such a way that it enables him to talk to his other Bobs. So if you have this uploaded consciousness, and you've got this super intelligence concept of being able to ratchet up speed, and then you can 3D print yourself and replicate, the possibilities of moving through the galaxy suddenly become pretty high, and you don't need to stay at speeds that we meat sack humans can travel through space at. He could ratchet up the G's, travel at 50 G's of acceleration and deceleration without harming himself. Yeah, it makes the story very plausible and very interesting. Yeah, I'd have to say Dennis E. Taylor, who, by the way, is a Canadian author, uh, I think his he's a bit of a tech bro. So when I read this, I get the impression that it's written by a tech bro for tech bros, and I don't mean that too negatively. I loved it. I thought it was really good, but there weren't a lot of female characters in the book. That's something that I would note, and definitely the audience is people who really like this type of sci-fi, which is honestly it's me. But I can see how a lot of people might not connect with this if they don't have that type of sensibility. With that said, I immediately went on to the next one, and I really want to do the third one as well. So I had a blast listening to these, and I also listened to them. I love Ray Porter; he's such a great narrator. So I do 2 thumbs up myself for this book.
Well, I'll do one thumb up. And I also have to echo what you said, Kevin. I mean, and such a guy book. Maybe not just in terms of the tech bro and what's the subject matter, but there are like 0 female voices in the first one, and I think one, somebody must have mentioned it to him in the second one. There is a female character, but just sort of as a love interest to the main, to the Bobs, and you're replicating Bobs, so it's a whole lot of the same guy, with tweaks and differences, and I love the story. Of the first one especially. And the second one I agree too, Tristan. I listened to it and it was a little bit too much more of the same. It kind of faded in my interest. But it's a great audiobook, and it's a great audiobook in the car, I find. So I listen to all this stuff in my car because it's just got the right structure. It's short chapters, lots going on. You'd literally just driving the groceries, you can take in one chapter. And today I drove 4 hours, to and from Peterborough, and I think I finished most of the second book. What I will say I do like that's unique about this book is that he turns a lot of tropes on their head. Instead of the prime directive, which we're all so used to, it's like it's kind of weird when you think about it. Like we're all like, oh, that's a law, that you can't interfere because Star Trek said so. And he sort of takes this and puts it on his head. It's like, actually, it's not a law. I can do whatever I want. And so he just finds an intelligent species that really moves him, and he wants to protect them, and he wants to help them. And becomes the Sky God, the Sky Bob. I thought that was great, right? It's just a story I haven't heard before because there's such a, I don't know, nobody writes about that. But why not? So he turns that on its head, and I've noticed a few other tropes, sort of standard sci-fi tropes that he sort of, I think, quite consciously just kind of turns on their head, and he's like, well, let's do it backwards. Let's do it the inverse of what most people do with that story. So I thought I appreciated it, and I think it's a good beach read. In the middle of the winter, it's a car listen, but it's the kind of book that's kind of like it's candy, and there's certainly room for candy in the world.
Yeah, you put it perfectly there. For me, I totally agree. It's a beach read that I've been listening to in the car. And I'm not an audiobook guy, so this is the first time I've actually given audiobooks a try, because that was the only way I could get to the book. So it's very limited space. You can only get it through Amazon. So if you don't have a Kindle, you've got to download it on Audible. So I was a little miffed about that at first, about that sort of restrictive access. But I started playing it in the car, commuting to work, and I was like, this is perfect. Like, it's not in depth enough that it's going to distract me from driving. I can drive safely. I can listen to it. And it's like a beach read with ADHD for dudes. It's sort of like, because each chapter is so quick, right? Like each chapter would be like 5 minutes and you're in another world. So as the Bobs populate the galaxy, you've got dozens of Bobs, and they kind of give themselves different names, but it all kind of like, you just kind of try and track the storylines after a while. And so it almost doesn't matter. And it covers it all. Like he gets pretty sciencey at times in an accessible way. There's anthropology, there's war, there's aliens, there's alien war. There's human civilization building and pop culture references. Like there's a little bit, there's something for everyone, I think. And it's, for the audiobook, it's the narrator's great, but I love that you both pointed out the lack of women, and then when he does introduce a woman, a female character, like a sort of main character in one of the storylines, it's narrated by the guy. So it's even the woman is like got a dude putting on a girl's voice, and that's kind of weird, right? Like there was like we couldn't afford the extra money for one more voice actor, so we're gonna put it on this poor narrator to do everybody, and that's a bit of a, I find it, if it was a serious book, it would take me out of it, but it's not a serious read, so it's fine. But it is. I'm on book 3, so I can't. I'm clearly a customer here, so I've been, because I've been going into the office a little more, so I'm on about quarter of the way through the 3rd book, and yeah, it's totally fun. I needed a break from the Kim Stanley Robinson book I was reading, and this is the perfect break from it. And then I'm kind of going back and forth. But yeah, I could tell you, but by the 3rd book, not a lot has changed in terms of style. Like it's the same book 3 times over, and I suspect that's and that's fine. I've been enjoying it. I get a real kick out of it for all those same reasons that you all have mentioned. Like it's an easy, fun read, and in terms of the Prime Directive thing that you brought up there, Marty, I'm the same way. I love that he like totally like, no, I'm going to play God, because that's what I would do. I would be like, screw it. I will be your Lord and Savior, and I wouldn't even be a good God. Like I would be one who was feared. I should not be given any power whatsoever. If so, like just I would be a petty tyrant is what it would be. Except so it's just a good thing I'm nobody, because it would all go terribly wrong. Would I ever be given that sort of level of power? Anyways, yeah,
it's a good thing we don't live in the Samiverse.
Yeah, you're all very fortunate. You're all very fortunate, and I'll do the world a favor if like freezing my brain becomes an option. I'll forego it and spare you all.
Okay.
Any future tyranny.
Thanks, Sam.
Cool.
Whose book of the month is it?
It's me.
Marty
it's time.
Again. Oh man,
Marty again. It's been forever, man. Forever. I've been dying to pick a book.
That's what you say every time.
Well, I spend 4 months reading furiously to try to find something worthy. And so I'm very excited about this month. Yes, my turn to pick a book. And the book is Beggars in Spain by Nancy Kress, which is certainly a good antidote to the surfeit of guyness that we just talked about from the Bobiverse. So Nancy Kress wrote a novella in 1991, I believe, called Beggars in Spain, and it won both the Hugo and the Nebula, I believe. So it was, and she'd been writing, I think, for a while. This was sort of a big success for her, and then she expanded that novella into a novel called Beggars in Spain in 1995, I believe. And 1993, and it just blew me away. I gotta say, it's one of these books that I just devoured it. It hit all the themes that I'm kind of really interested in. It's got I read every time I read science fiction by women, it really hits me that it's more literary than a lot of the science fiction by men that I read. And I don't want to, pigeonhole anybody, but I am after that literary sort of quality, where, you read a book that it might be science fiction or it might not, but, it really comes across as like a piece of literature that's not necessarily like genre fiction, like sci-fi, but it happens to have all these themes and it's clearly science fiction. But it's just really well written. The characters are really grab you. The story is really simple in a sense. It starts simple. So the premise is the first genetically modified property of a human. Nah, I can't do this. Hold on. You're gonna have to cut that. The premise is that that people learn to genetically modify like embryos, right? The first thing that they modify babies to be, that there is the ability to not need sleep. Okay, so you want to add an advantage to your children. You want to give them an advantage over their peers. You give them an extra 8 hours a day. where they don't need to sleep. Okay, and so this is kind of like stands in as a superpower, but quite a feasible sort of superpower, where you suddenly have two classes of people. You have people that don't need to sleep, and you have people that do. And so suddenly the people that don't need to sleep just accelerate, way past their peers, and they're able to simply do more, study harder, work harder, and get further ahead in life. So that's like a pretty plausible thing. I don't know if it's biologically plausible, if it's ever going to be possible, but it's sort of used as this novum in this book to talk about the kind of split in society, the social consequences of having two different kinds of people. People that have an advantage over other people, and then regular people, and then the whole thing just like blows up. So Beggars in Spain, I think, is just an excellent book. It really explores all the issues that would arise socially, economically, politically, from being able to give your babies an advantage that other people don't have. And then it was so good that so she continued on with a trilogy. So there's a second book called Beggars and Choosers, and a third book called Beggar's Ride. And I literally read the last page of Beggars in Spain, and I went to my bookshelf and I picked the second one right off the bookshelf and started reading it right away. It was that good. Usually I need a break between books, but I couldn't stop. So the first one's the best. The second and third are pretty good, and she just takes this idea and just pushes it further and further and further. And I loved it. So I hope you guys like it too. We'll talk about it in more detail next time.
Oh, I'm excited. So is this the novella that we're reading, or is it the novel?
The novel. Yeah, read the novel.
Okay.
The novella is kind of hard to find. I do have it in a collection somewhere, and I've been wanting to go back. And it's a lot like Blood Music was a novella that was turned into a novel, right? And same story with this. And it's quite different experience reading the novella version versus the novel. But I think the novel's excellent. It's just really, really good. And I've also learned something that I like. Maybe I'm a child of the 90s. I am a child of the 90s. Like, I was in high school in the 90s. And I like science fiction from the 90s. There's something that is kind of, I don't know, unique and different about science fiction from that age, because it was just before computers exploded and took over everything. And, science fiction since the 90s is just so heavy on AI and computers and all this stuff. And it's kind of refreshing to just go back to this earlier age where, it's not all about computers all the time. And this is a it falls in the whole biological sci-fi sort of category. It's a lot like Blood Music in that sense, right? It's contemplating the consequences of genetic manipulation, and what the kind of technologies we can develop with genetics. And I think that might actually be starting to come to fruition today. So it's really interesting to go back to this simpler time, where people were thinking forward into what would happen, what's possible, what'll happen when we can manipulate the genes and organisms, not just of animals and plants, but maybe our own babies. So, yeah.
Well, for trivia this week, in celebration of Kim Stanley Robinson being on the episode, I have 5 questions where you will have to identify the famous Stanley or Kim that I have come up with. All right? So our very...
Okay.
He's just got so many names to choose from. It wasn't hard to do. All right. This very famous Stanley is an actor whose film debut was Prizzi's Honor during the mid-'80s.
Stanley Kubrick.
No.
Oh.
Actor.
Stanley Tucci.
Yes. Tristan, you're on the board with one. Our next very famous Stan has got a thing for men in tights.
Stanley Kubrick. That's the only Stan I know.
No.
You have to.
And they tend to have superpowers.
Your Stanley Kubrick question now.
They tend to have... Stan Lee.
There you go. All right.
Stan Lee, of course. Yeah.
All right. This is a tough one. All right. This Kim hails from Saskatoon and played a biker on Sons of Anarchy. No, this is a hard one. No, okay, well, Google Kim Coates. You'll recognize him immediately, and you'll understand why he gravitated to macho roles, because he is essentially the boy named Stu. And this very famous Kim is really into movies and was kind of a crap dad and kind of a crappy leader.
Kim Jong-un?
Close.
Kim Jong-il?
Yes. All right. And finally, this semi-famous Kim was once married to a rapper with frosted tips.
Kim Kardashian.
Nope.
Kim Basinger?
No, a famous rapper with a famous white rapper with bleach blonde hair. That's okay. We're not cool. It's a sci-fi podcast.
We're not cool enough to know about.
No,
rappers.
we're looking for. I was looking for Kim Mathers, which is.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't know.
No, okay. Well, it's oh man,
Eminem.
Yeah, Eminem's first wife. So Marty wins trivia this week. Marty, I will buy you a beer because I don't have any cool giveaways.
Well, that sounds great. I could use a beer. Well, as my prize, actually, I will claim asking another Stan question, because you missed the biggest and most obvious Stan in our world. So this famous Stan is Polish, as are many Stans, I suppose, and wrote Solaris.
I have
Come
no
on,
idea.
guys. He's the only and most famous Polish science fiction writer. What else has he written? He's written The Siberiad, His Master's Voice, Fables for Robots.
I know him not.
Nope, no idea.
All right.
Stanislovian. I don't know.
Well, you're just changing the first name. I'm looking for the last name.
Oh. It is Stanislav.
Well, they're all Stanislav if they're from Poland anyway. Okay, it's Stan Lem. Stan Lem.
Lem. L-E-M.
Yeah. Solaris. What else did he do? I mean, he's kind of. I mean, he might be the first science fiction I ever read, because my dad was a big fan. The Tales of Ejon Tichy, space pilot. There's a lot. He's got these the Siberiad is a collection of short stories, basically. But he's like a really early science fiction writer that was just really far out. Like, his ideas are just like, for the time that he was writing in the 50s, probably 60s, he was way ahead of everybody else in terms of thinking of uploaded brains and really philosophical sort of themes in his writing. Yeah.
Cool.
Stan Lem.
Thank you for joining us once again. Next week, David Zindel is with us. If you have not reviewed, liked, subscribed, anything to our show, please do so. Let us know what we're doing right. It helps us to keep making good content. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time.